Ice. It blankets our planet's poles, drapes its highest peaks, and drifts across our oceans. It seems vast, unchanging, eternal, but ice is more than just a frozen spectacle. It's a vital part of Earth's delicate climate system, a silent guardian reflecting sunlight and regulating temperatures. For millennia, this balance has held, but now a new era is dawning, one where the once stable ice is succumbing to the relentless advance of human-induced climate change. As temperatures rise, glaciers shrink, ice sheets thin, and sea ice dwindles. The consequences of this melting ice are profound, reaching far beyond the polar regions and threatening to reshape our world in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. The Arctic, once a realm of perpetual winter, is warming at twice the rate of the rest of the planet. This warming is causing the Arctic sea ice, a critical reflector of sunlight, to shrink at an alarming rate. As the ice melts, it exposes darker ocean water, which absorbs more heat, further accelerating the warming process. This feedback loop, a hallmark of climate change, is pushing the Arctic towards a tipping point, beyond which the consequences are irreversible. The melting of ice is not just an Arctic problem. Across the globe, glaciers are retreating from the Himalayas to the Andes, from the Alps to the Rockies. These glaciers are vital sources of fresh water for billions of people, feeding rivers and sustaining ecosystems. As they disappear, so too will the lifeblood of countless communities. The consequences of this loss will be felt far and wide, from water shortages to agricultural decline, from social unrest to mass migrations. GAP3S. As sea levels rise, entire communities are being forced to flee their homes. These climate refugees are becoming an increasingly common sight, from the low-lying islands of the Pacific to the coastal cities of the United States. The displacement of millions of people is creating a humanitarian crisis, with far-reaching social, economic, and political implications. The world must come together to address this growing challenge, finding ways to support those who are most vulnerable and to mitigate the impacts of climate change before it's too late. Take the island nation of Kiribati, for example. With much of its land barely a meter above sea level, Kiribati faces an existential threat from rising waters. The government has already purchased land in Fiji as a potential refuge for its people, a last-ditch effort to preserve their culture and way of life. In the United States, coastal cities like Miami and New Orleans are also grappling with the realities of climate displacement. As storms intensify and sea levels rise, these cities are investing in massive infrastructure projects to hold back the water. But for many, these efforts may not be enough, and relocation becomes an inevitable reality. The plight of climate refugees underscores the urgent need for global cooperation. Nations must work together to provide safe havens for those displaced by climate change and to develop sustainable solutions that address the root causes of this crisis. It's a daunting challenge, but one that we must confront head-on if we are to protect our planet and its people. GAP3S. Despite the dire consequences of melting ice, there is hope. Around the world, scientists, engineers, and policymakers are developing innovative solutions to combat climate change and protect our planet's ice. From advanced carbon capture technologies to ambitious reforestation projects, these efforts are making a difference. By investing in renewable energy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and promoting sustainable practices, we can slow the rate of ice melt and preserve the delicate balance of our climate system. The future of our planet depends on our ability to act now with urgency and determination. Imagine a world where coastlines vanish, swallowed by rising seas, where iconic cities, once bustling with life, are abandoned to the encroaching tides. This is not a scene from a science fiction film, it's the stark reality we face as Earth's ice melts at an unprecedented rate. The culprit is clear: human-induced climate change is driving global temperatures upwards, and the consequences for our oceans are profound. As the planet warms, seawater expands, leading to rising sea levels. This thermal expansion is compounded by the influx of meltwater from glaciers and ice sheets, further exacerbating the problem. Scientists estimate that if all the ice on Earth were to melt, sea levels would rise by a staggering 216 feet. While this complete meltdown is unlikely in the near future, even a fraction of that rise would have catastrophic consequences for coastal communities and ecosystems worldwide. Consider the fate of Bangladesh, a low-lying nation on the front lines of climate change. Home to over 160 million people, Bangladesh is already grappling with the impacts of rising sea levels, including more frequent and intense flooding, saltwater intrusion into freshwater sources, and displacement of coastal communities. A 1-meter rise in sea level would inundate 17% of the country's landmass, displacing millions of people and devastating its economy. The Maldive Islands, a tropical paradise in the Indian Ocean, face an even more precarious future. With an average elevation of just 4 feet above sea level, the Maldives are particularly vulnerable to even modest rises in sea level. The country's government is already exploring options for relocation, recognizing that their homeland may soon be uninhabitable. The Maldives are a stark reminder that the impacts of climate change are not evenly distributed. It's often the poorest and most vulnerable who bear the brunt of the consequences.